Every leader in history, no matter how great, made mistakes. Well, they did. And the presidents of the United States are no exception. George Washington, the father of our country, led America through its infancy. But even he stumbled. One of his biggest blunders was the way he handled the Whiskey Rebellion. When farmers protested against a new tax on whiskey, Washington marched federal troops into Pennsylvania to quash the rebellion. This heavy-handed approach raised questions about the power of the federal government and set a precedent for future conflicts over states' rights. John Adams, the second president, faced challenges both foreign and domestic. But his gravest error was the passage of the Alien and Sedition Acts. In an attempt to silence political opposition, Adams and his Federalist Congress enacted laws that targeted immigrants and restricted free speech. These acts violated the principles of the Constitution and stirred outrage among Jeffersonian Republicans, tarnishing Adams' legacy. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, is celebrated for his ideals of liberty and equality. However, his decision to impose an Embargo Act in 1807 proved disastrous. Seeking to pressure Britain and France into respecting American neutrality, Jefferson banned all foreign trade. But the embargo backfired, devastating the American economy and demonstrating the limitations of economic warfare. James Madison, hailed as the father of the Constitution, faced immense challenges during his presidency, including the War of 1812. Madison's decision to declare war on Britain was fraught with consequences. Despite early victories, the conflict exposed America's military weaknesses and led to the burning of the White House. The war's inconclusive outcome left many questioning Madison's leadership and the nation's readiness for global conflict. James Monroe's presidency was marked by the spirit of national unity known as the Era of Good Feelings. Yet his handling of the Missouri Compromise of 1820 revealed the deep divisions over slavery. By allowing Missouri's admission as a slave state while Maine entered as free, Monroe postponed the inevitable reckoning over slavery's expansion. This temporary solution only delayed the eruption of tensions that would ultimately lead to civil war. John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams, ascended to the presidency amid controversy. His support for the Tariff of Abominations in 1828 ignited a firestorm of protest in the South. Southerners viewed the tariff as unfair and detrimental to their economic interests, fueling the nullification crisis. Adams' failure to defuse the tensions over tariffs exacerbated sectional divisions, setting the stage for future conflict. Andrew Jackson, the people's president, left a complex legacy, marred by his treatment of Native Americans. His signing of the Indian Removal Act in 1830 led to the forced relocation of native tribes from their ancestral lands. The Trail of Tears, as it became known, resulted in the deaths of thousands of indigenous people. Jackson's policy of Indian removal symbolized the darker side of American expansionism. Martin Van Buren, inheriting the presidency during an economic crisis, struggled to address the nation's woes. His decision to maintain the status quo in response to the Panic of 1837 proved insufficient. Van Buren's commitment to laissez-faire economics and limited government intervention failed to alleviate the suffering of millions affected by the Depression, contributing to his political downfall. William Henry Harrison's presidency was tragically brief, lasting only 31 days before his untimely death. However, his decision to deliver a lengthy inaugural address in frigid weather left a lasting impression. Harrison, seeking to project strength and vigor, spoke for over 2 hours without wearing a coat or hat. This display of endurance proved fatal, as Harrison contracted pneumonia and died soon after taking office. John Tyler, thrust into the presidency after Harrison's death, faced considerable challenges, including the annexation of Texas. His support for Texas annexation inflamed tensions with Mexico and reignited debates over slavery's expansion. Tyler's actions paved the way for Texas statehood, but intensified sectional strife, bringing the nation closer to civil war. James K. Polk, known for his ambitious agenda of westward expansion, achieved significant territorial gains for the United States. Yet, his decision to provoke war with Mexico through the annexation of Texas and the disputed territory of California sparked the Mexican-American War. Despite achieving victory and acquiring vast territories, Polk's aggressive policies raised questions about the morality and consequences of manifest destiny. Zachary Taylor, a hero of the Mexican-American War, faced the daunting task of preserving the Union amidst growing sectional tensions. His ambiguous stance on the Compromise of 1850, a series of legislative measures aimed at diffusing tensions between free and slave states, failed to satisfy either side. Taylor's death in 1850 further complicated efforts to reach a compromise, setting the stage for escalating conflict. Millard Fillmore, succeeding Taylor as president, inherited the divisive issue of slavery. His decision to sign the Compromise of 1850 into law sought to appease both Northern and Southern interests. However, the compromise's support for the Fugitive Slave Act further inflamed abolitionist sentiments in the North. Fillmore's attempt at compromise only deepened the nation's divisions, hastening the onset of civil war. Franklin Pierce, a compromise candidate, faced the daunting task of preserving national unity amid mounting tensions over slavery. His support for the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed for popular sovereignty in determining slavery's expansion, ignited violence and bloodshed in the Kansas Territory. Pierce's failure to address the escalating crisis further eroded public confidence in his leadership. James Buchanan, the last president before the Civil War, presided over a nation on the brink of collapse. His failure to prevent Southern secession and his inaction in the face of escalating tensions condemned his presidency. Buchanan's reluctance to take decisive action to preserve the Union only hastened its dissolution, leaving a legacy of indecision and failure. Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, led the nation through its darkest hour. Yet, even he made mistakes. His suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War, allowing for the arrest and detention of suspected Confederate sympathizers without trial, raised concerns about civil liberties. While Lincoln justified these actions as necessary for preserving the Union, they remain a controversial aspect of his legacy. Andrew Johnson, thrust into the presidency after Lincoln's assassination, faced the monumental task of Reconstruction. His lenient approach to readmitting Southern states into the Union and his opposition to civil rights legislation injured radical Republicans. Johnson's clashes with Congress ultimately led to his impeachment, highlighting the challenges of reconciling a divided nation. Ulysses S. Grant, the hero of the Civil War, struggled with the complexities of post-war Reconstruction and governance. His administration was plagued by corruption scandals, including the notorious Credit Mobilier affair and the Whiskey Ring scandal. Grant's inability to root out corruption within his administration tarnished his reputation and undermined public trust in government. Rutherford B. Hayes, who assumed the presidency after the disputed election of 1876, faced challenges in healing the nation's wounds. His decision to withdraw federal troops from the South effectively ended Reconstruction. While hailed as a gesture of reconciliation, Hayes' abandonment of African American civil rights in the South set back the cause of racial equality for generations. James A. Garfield's presidency was tragically cut short by an assassin's bullet, but his brief tenure was not without missteps. His failure to address the issue of civil service reform contributed to his assassination by a disgruntled office seeker. Garfield's death underscored the need for government reform and the dangers of political patronage. Chester A. Arthur, a reluctant reformer, surprised many with his commitment to civil service reform. However, his efforts were limited in scope, and he faced criticism for his handling of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. While the act established a merit-based system for federal employment, it fell short of eliminating corruption and political favoritism. Grover Cleveland, the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, grappled with economic challenges during his tenure. His handling of the Pullman Strike of 1894, in which federal troops were used to suppress labor unrest, raised questions about the role of government in labor disputes. Cleveland's intervention in the strike strained relations with labor unions and highlighted the tensions between capital and labor. Benjamin Harrison, the grandson of President William Henry Harrison, faced economic turmoil during his presidency. His support for the McKinley Tariff of 1890, which raised protective tariffs to record levels, alienated consumers and exacerbated economic hardships for farmers and consumers. Harrison's tariff policies contributed to the Republican Party's defeat in the 1892 presidential election. Stay tuned for the second part, where we'll continue our journey through history, examining the mistakes of more recent presidents, from Herbert Hoover to Joe Biden. Each era brings its own challenges and decisions that shaped the course of American history.